More GOP dirty tricks against Ron Paul supporters. 17 Ron Paul delegates have been disqualified from representing the state of Massachusetts at the Republican National Convention in Tampa. The reason? Because they didn't sign an affidavit that under the penalty of perjury would swear their support for Mitt Romney's nomination. Now, Ron Paul supporters are known for their rowdiness. But the Republican Party has never required an affidavit in the process of selecting representative delegates. So why now? And what will this mean for the convention? To answer these and more, I'm joined now by Tim Cavanaugh, managing editor for Reason.com. Thanks for joining me, Tim. Why do you think it is that they're taking such unprecedented measures? I mean, I thought it was kind of in the bag for Romney at this point.
It is in the bag for Romney. Ron Paul himself has more or less withdrawn from the field. So, I mean, it's unnecessary PR headache. There are a lot of people in the Republican Party who have this feeling like we want to really openly purge the Ron Paul supporters. Their argument being that these are not real Republicans. They've sort of come into the party, you know, by convenience just because of Ron Paul, who's an outlier who happens to believe in all the things that the Republicans say they believe in.
So why do you think it is that, so they're just doing it just to exclude and try to just, you know, say that you're not part of the Republican Party?
Yeah, I think they want to make examples in some cases, just to say we can make our own rules. And they can make their own rules. I mean, you know, we want to remember the First Amendment freedom of association with regard to political parties. I don't like the way they're doing what they're doing, but they do have the right to do it as organized parties who are allowed, you know, to do what they want under the freedom of association.
So, Tim, going off what you just said, you know, I was wondering if this is even legal. As you said, it is. In 2008, when a Utah delegate wanted to vote for Romney instead of McCain, the RNC Legals Council ruled that he could vote with his conscience. They said that the RNC does not recognize a state's binding of national delegates, and if a delegate wanted to vote for whoever they choose, they can as a free agent. So does this not apply? I mean,
that seems to be, it would seem to apply, yes. And, you know, they should make their own rules and they should live by them. And certainly the whole concept of a delegate system implies that there is a conscious person there. The delegate is not just a 0 or a 1. It's a person who will make his or her own decision. And so, yeah, they should be free to do so. And the party should not be, I don't want to use a lot of shoulds. I mean, they can do it whatever that way they want, but I would prefer that they not use force, that you actually make such an attractive party and such an attractive candidate that people in your own party, your own delegates, want to vote for that person. If they don't, my sense of fair play says that they should be allowed to voice their opinion. And there is certainly anecdotal evidence and a lot of numerical evidence, and the evidence of a lot of caucuses and votes that we've seen over this winter and spring to say that Ron Paul's people should get a voice in the Republican Party.
It is interesting, Tim, that it seems like they're being forced. I mean, perjury is a big deal, and when you're forcing someone to sign an affidavit, that's no joke. Do you think that this is just because of embarrassment mostly? I mean, the whole coup that happened in Massachusetts where Ron Paul took so many delegates.
Yeah, I mean, Ron Paul has been working a delegate strategy from the beginning. We've been covering a lot at Reason.com. I would recommend the book, even if you weren't a colleague, but Ron Paul's Revolution by Brian Doherty is a good place to catch up on how they have been working it in this campaign and what the game plan is now. I mean, the important thing here is that there is a large force of Ron Paul people. They are not officially married. It's more of a common law arrangement with the Republican Party. So, you know, their needs have to be taken into account. They talk about something serious. They talk about a lot of things that are foundational to what America is, what the United States of America is. and they need to be taken seriously. Whether they will stay with the Republican Party is interesting, and how they will behave now that, you know, Spartacus himself is not on the battlefield, it will also be interesting to see.
What do you think about Rand Paul's recent endorsement for Romney?
You know, as Ron Paul always says, we have discipline in our family, but they don't make the rules on who can do what. It is neither an indicator nor, for or against the Ron Paul's own endorsement. Unclear how he's going to go. Don't know whether he's going to endorse. It seems hard to believe he would endorse Romney with the current platform that Romney has, and in fact with the entire history that Romney has in American politics. And that's bad news for Romney, because you know, when you look at the actual votes, when you look at how many people actually came out to the polls in these primaries so far this year, Romney is drawing not too many more people than he did in 2008 when he lost to John McCain, who then went on to lose to Barack Obama. So, you know, he needs everybody he can get. I think it's also unnecessary. I mean, that's what's so sad about this Massachusetts thing. Why alienate people who you might be able to get onto your side?
Let's hear really quickly from Ron Paul about the endorsement of Romney. Let's roll that.
Your son, Senator Rand Paul, has endorsed Romney. I take it you're not yet ready yourself to endorse Romney, are you?
No. Not ready.
You're not ready?
No way.
So he sounded pretty determined that he wasn't going
Speaking for me, too.
He wasn't going to endorse him. But I mean, going back to his son really quickly, I know that you said that it's you know, more about the message. This doesn't really deter the Ron Paul movement, but you have to admit it did kind of disappoint a lot of people who were hoping that Rand Paul would follow in his father's footsteps now that Ron Paul is kind of out of the game.
Yeah, and the history of Rand Paul himself, which is fairly brief at this point, he hasn't been around for very long, but you know, the one thing you have to remember about both Pauls is they win elections, and you know, that's easier said than done. The Congress is a very sweaty, small stakes game. You're running every 2 years. You know, there are 430 some of you, and so it's a tough racket in a lot of ways, being in the Congress, and yet Ron Paul managed to stay in the Congress for several terms, leave, run for president, lose that campaign, obviously, and then come back to the Congress and serve for many more terms, and he's now retiring. And Rand Paul has won the Senate, which is obviously a far more coveted seat, and so he's got to play the game as they all have to do. I mean, you do have to win elections, and that's something you need to keep in mind when you think about if there is a Paul dynasty. I'm not a big believer in dynasties, so I don't, you know, I'm not going to tell anybody to put their stakes on any particular Paul, but you do have to remember that it's smart to stay with the Republicans. It's a long tradition. Ronald Reagan had his 11th, not the 11th Amendment, but his 11th commandment: "Thou shalt not speak badly of another Republican." So that's what they're looking to do, and they.
But isn't that kind of
for a party to want to?
Isn't that kind of doublespeak? I mean, here, obviously, the Republican establishment is continuing to shut out Ron Paul's supporters over and over again. I mean, they're going to the extremes, telling them they're signing affidavits to promise they'll vote for Romney, but then you're also saying that you know, it's smart to kind of cater to this establishment that's shut out the supporters to play the long game.
I haven't looked at InTrade in a while, but I don't know where Romney is these days. I don't think it's a smart move for the Republicans to be doing that. You know, in addition to just being an unethical move and being something that, you know, indicates they're not really interested in new ideas. And Romney is certainly evidence that they're not interested in new ideas.
So what are Ron Paul supporters supposed to do at this point if the Republican establishment continues to shut them out? Just continue to cater to the establishment?
Well, there was an interesting announcement by Cafe Press a couple days ago, which does the little, you know, you can make your own T-shirts, indicating that for the first time Ron Paul has dropped below the president himself in the number of T-shirts and branded items they want. Don't know where Rand Paul was showing up, but Gary Johnson has been surging in the T-shirt market. I don't know how powerful a candidate Gary Johnson will be, but he stands for many of the things Ron Paul stands for. Doesn't stand for all of them, and Ron Paul pointedly has not said many kind words about Gary Johnson. So that's another alternative out there. or they could decide we want to stay in the Republican Party and work to make change from within. And, you know, we had a bunch of people elected in 2010, Rand Paul included, who may be moving in another direction. Maybe not with 100% of the grocery list that we would like them to have, but better than what we've had before.
It does seem like the GOP, as it stands right now, is so far off base than Ron Paul's whole libertarian philosophy, the small government, curbing back the military. I mean, and here's Romney talking about doubling the military, twice its size, potentially, you know, invading Iran and all of these things. I mean, it does seem like there's a giant dichotomy there when you're talking about trying to influence the RNC and the GOP from within. How possible is that, really?
Not very. I mean, the two parties, when they get into power, they look very much alike, and you certainly see that even now when they're vying for the party and they've decided what the establishment story can be allowed to be. But, you know, we are facing, it wasn't just an accident, and it certainly wasn't Ron Paul's magnetic charisma, although he has an interesting kind of negative charisma. You know, he's so humble that he stands tall. But, you know, it wasn't that drove all these people to Ron Paul. People didn't just out of the blue decide they were going to become obsessed with the Federal Reserve and with monetary policy and with 10% inflation since 2007 when nothing has been growing in our economy, yet our money for some reason has lost 10% of its value over that time. These are serious things that are happening to real people who are buying groceries every day and living less well every day, and they see Ron Paul saying something that's true about what is happening to them on the ground in America.
Tim, do you think that we're going to see other states take these measures that Massachusetts has and really try to use these tactics to shut out more delegates for the convention?
Yes, you will see it happening again and again, and especially since, I mean, there are states where Ron Paul can credibly claim to have won, so it's going to be tough. I mean, Romney has the numbers at this point, he has the delegates, but of course everybody wants to go into the convention. You know, conventions have completely been cut off from what they were supposed to be in their origins, where you go there and everybody gets together and we all vote and decide who's going to, and, you know, I'm not part of the we, but all those folks get together and decide who the candidate's going to be. Now they've just been turned into the, you know, these like a pre-game show at the Olympics where you already know who the vice president's going to be. It's all just a pageant, and you know, that's all that's supposed to happen. I think America would be well served if both parties, both major parties' conventions, once again became places where there's a challenge, where, you know, there's actual fighting going on. In that respect, maybe this is something to be optimistic about, that the Republicans, the Republican establishment takes this threat so seriously. It would be great if they had a contested election. Certainly great for us as journalists. A lot more interesting to cover a convention that hasn't been decided ahead of time.
It is very interesting. The rules seem to be changing by the day. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your perspective. That was Tim Cavanaugh, managing editor for Reason.com.